Like our content? It's funded by viewers like you. Please consider becoming a sustaining supporter of New Church Live today.
So good morning, friends. Pastor Chuck Blair, great to have you joining us here today. Whether you're here in our studio audience, you're joining us online, great to have you around. And today, because we're closing out the fiscal year, and that brings a lot of thoughts around church and how church works and church going forward and how does that look. And many churches, synagogues, mosques go through the same thing every year. So we're going to take some time today to talk about just church in general and how church changes over time. And in these changes, of course, they deal with organizations, but they're really most importantly changes in our own hearts. How life changes and how do we deal with change and how do we hold change? Because change a lot of the time can be such an intimidating, terrifying thing. So I want to talk a bit about that and about how this story of church and how we see it changing in a bunch of different ways. I know over the course of New Church Live, we've seen just so many changes in society. I mean, when we started, I remember we were talking about how do we get online, and if we got online, would we be able to afford a satellite uplink so people could download it on their TVs and this, that, and the other thing. And now it's done on a phone. I can remember when we had projectors. We bought our first set of big projectors in here, and they were a ton of money. And now we got this little tiny projector that we use a lot of the time that's a few $100. So things do change, and those changes are both exciting and terrifying. And I think anyone of my generation who's middle-aged right now has definitely seen that, has seen these shifts over time. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I do want to say that in light of this, like one very exciting thing I want to announce to you folks today is we did meet our fundraising goal this year. Yes, that had us all very happy. It's just we so deeply appreciate all the incredible support because an online world is just a very different world. It's different doing fundraising online. I mean, I can remember when the big thing was the bucket pass here, and we'd have several hundred people here at the Mitchell Performing Arts Center. That is no longer true. So we really depend on people to be able to donate online, and we really appreciate that support. So that's something worthwhile to celebrate. And shifting gears a little bit, today we're going to talk about what some of the things might be, some things we might be thinking about as we move ahead in terms of how to hold this change, because the changes aren't done. It's not like we've reached a time, at least in the world of churches, synagogues, mosques, houses of worship, where there's a new formula that's apparent, a new way of doing things that really works well and feels sustainable. I mean, things are changing dramatically. And how in the midst of all that change do we allow things to continue to move forward while continuing to maintain our dedication to first things first? I love this line where Emanuel Swedenborg said, yeah, you know what? With all of life, maintenance is perpetual creation. That idea that just to maintain anything, we need to be perpetually looking at ways to have it grow and change and shift and morph. And we're going to touch on some of those themes today. And the hope is, again, that you can see them on a corporate level, of course, but most importantly, see them in your own heart. See them with the things you love and how these things change and move and how we can, again, keep on coming back to first things recognizably first. So, friends, it is wonderful to have you here today. Thank you for joining us here at New Church Live. I hope all of you, again, had a great chance to enjoy last week's service. We had a bunch of kids in here. It was a terrific service. If you haven't seen it, please go back and take a look. It was a lot of fun. And I just want to tell you again, so grateful that we made our goal, so grateful that you're here, and so grateful to be able to share the next amount of time with you as we talk about the future and how we move into it more and more in times that can feel uncertain. So friends, welcome. Welcome to New Church Live.
Good morning.
There's a train coming. You don't need no baggage. You just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. You don't need no ticket. You just thank the Lord. Get ready for the train to Jordan. It's picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key, open the doors and board. There's hope for all among those love the most. There ain't no room for the hopeless sinner who would hurt all mankind just to save his own. Have pity on those whose chances grow thinner. There's no hiding place against a kingdom's throne. No hiding place, no hiding place. So people get ready, there's a train coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. You don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord.
Thank you, Ray. What a beautiful song. And today we're going to talk about that idea of this idea of faith and the movement of faith. That song captures it beautifully. And the idea that we're getting on this journey, and we've always been on the journey in a way, and how we can allow this journey to pull us forward. There's a very famous, very famous story that talks about the dynamics of change. And it uses the example of old wine, new wineskins, old wine, how all these different combinations work and can come together. So we're going to set up that story taking a look at this quote here. This is from John, a beautiful quote. And what it says is, they said to him, John's disciples often fast and pray, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees, but yours go on eating and drinking. And it's an interesting phrase there, and it's sort of setting up this conversation. And this group of Pharisees, this group of professional clergy, and they're saying, look, there are all these structures around religion, and we've always followed these structures, and you're not following them. You're not following the way church is supposed to be. And at that time, again, we're talking, this was in a Jewish population, so the rules of the synagogue. They weren't following the rules of the synagogue, the rules of righteousness, the way they were supposed to in many ways. And Jesus is constantly trying to offer us analogies that say, yeah, that might be true, that changes might be happening on the outside, but we need to keep coming back to this. We need to keep coming back to the heart of the matter. Keep coming back to the heart of the matter. So Jesus offers this beautiful passage here about it, where he uses the example of wineskins. Then Jesus told them this parable. No one tears a piece out of a new garment to patch an old one. Otherwise, they will have torn the new garment, and the patch from the new will not match the old. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, new wine must be poured into new wineskins. I think obvious metaphor there. And no one, after drinking old wine, wants the new. They say the old is better. And I got to be honest, friends, like I had never read it far enough to really let that last line sink in. So that's where I kind of want to start. You know, here Jesus is saying something beautiful. He's saying, look, you know, old wineskins works fine. But new wine, wine that is in the midst of fermenting, doesn't do well in old wineskins. And just why was that scientifically? Wineskins were made out of leather. And as the wine fermented, it expanded. As it expanded, if that form was too rigid, it would literally tear the wineskin and you'd lose all the wine. But there's a beautiful part here because there is an honoring of the old. It's saying, who doesn't love the old wine? I think back to, pictures of old wine, thinking of it metaphorically here, pictures of churches the way they used to work. And the beauty of the way some of these churches used to work is it was a true community. Everybody knew everyone else's name. There was this connectedness. I know I grew up in a church in Pittsburgh, and my family had its row. The Van Zyvertons had their row. The Smiths had, everybody had their row. There were these annual events that you looked forward to every year, with Christmas and work parties and men's weekends. There was this rhythm to it. And it's so easy, friends, to look at that and think, well, that was then. There wasn't anything of value there. We've changed. We've grown beyond that. Be so careful of that. I think we just need to be super careful of that. Because those old forms, and here we're talking, you could use so many different analogies for that. Those old forms really did serve. And they really did serve incredibly, incredibly well. There were all kinds of good things that came out of it. Again, I think of the connections in the new church. Sometimes we use this phrase, remains. Remains are those little cherished memories that we get as children that sort of really land on our heart. I have many great memories around Easter and Thanksgiving and Christmas. Lots of really tender, warm fuzzies around that. It really became sort of a pivot of our family's life when I was growing up. Again, not a bad thing at all. A lot of beauty to that, and a lot of warm memories, that I think of now at my age that makes a big difference. But we're in a time, friends, of clear fermentation. Clear fermentation. So much. We could list. I could have you text in things. You could share 20 of them. So many things have changed so rapidly. Even the idea in our culture today, even the idea that we want to go to like a religious authority, and I'm not just talking a pastor, I'm talking church or a synagogue or a mosque, even that we go there to sort of get reoriented towards a first things first, that's very different today. Today is much more about a buffet line where people are very comfortable taking a little bit of this, a little bit of that, grabbing some from over here, going over there, grabbing a little piece, listening to this podcast, reading that book, grabbing this whole array of things. There's not just going to one source anymore. Now again, with all things, friends, there's a plus side to that. The plus side being that there's a vibrancy to spirituality today that's very unique. I know the interactions as a congregation that we have with people of different faiths is very different than a congregation would have had 50 years ago. We're constantly working with different groups. That's a real plus side. The minus side of this, and this one's sort of hard. This one's sort of hard because I don't quite even know exactly how to hold it. There's not anymore this deep sense of we're going to go a place and we're going to learn about the truth. And we're going to be dedicated to that. And we're going to live it out as best we can. Does that mean that it's homogeneous, that there's just one truth and that we just start to live that? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It means that we're trying to figure something out here. And to use a beautiful metaphor that I love, it's in life we have a chance. We can build 100 drills. We can drill for water 1 foot down, do that with 100 drills, or we could take one drill and go 100 feet down. We get to choose. And I think today is a lot about drilling a bunch of different wells, but at a very shallow level. And back then it was about what are you going to commit to and how can you drill really deeply there. Now again, advantages and disadvantages to each one, that's for sure. But we live in that time where that means that there's just a lot of different fermentation. There's just a lot of different things. And it feels like so much is sort of topsy-turvy, way up, way down. And how do we sort of figure out a way to move forward where it just doesn't feel, at least for me, it just doesn't feel clear anymore. It doesn't feel clear. In a strange way, as a pastor, I feel I know less now about how a church should work in the world than I knew when New Church Live started 18 years ago, because of that level of fermentation. And again, we're right in the middle of it, right in the middle of it. And I don't see any time we'll be out of it any time in the next year or two, that's for sure. This is a long process. So I think, friends, what we can take a look at then is going back to sort of first things first, content versus form. There's the content, there's the wine, there's the form, there's the wineskins. And I think, again, it's easy to pay attention to the wineskins, but maybe we can start by going, yeah, let's go back to the wine. Let's go back to the content. Let's go back to these first things and really try to take a look at those and see how it could be if we really focus on the content, really take a look at the content as best we can. With looking at that content, friends, one way to kind of see it, and we're going to be looking at faith and goodwill here, when we really go back to the content of these things, is really going back to what does faith actually look like? What does faith actually look like? It's easy to hold faith as that faith is this list of beliefs, and we have this list of beliefs, we check off those list of beliefs, and that's actually true faith. But faith is so much more than that. Of course, faith does have beliefs to it, and these beliefs are critical and beautiful. We want to talk about them, we want to share them, we want to organize our lives around them. It's really hard to cook without a recipe. It's really hard to cook without ingredients. And so we need those truths. We need those true things. But a lot of it, friends, is how we approach it. And how do we approach times where it feels like there's so much fermentation going on? Because, and this is a little bit of an aside, it's easy just to double down on clarity. Like if we just get super, super clear about exactly what we believe and we just do that, that'll help us with the fermentation process. And it is important, and that will be really helpful, but it's not the full answer. It's not the full answer. And I say that, and part of my brain is like, what's the little voice in the back of my head's going, yeah, but I really wish it was. I really wish that it could be this doubling down. I really wish it could be this highly delineated, like here's what it is, end of story. But the problem is, friends, with that approach, there's no space for growth. There's none. There's none. A little bit of an aside, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, we talk a lot about him in here. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a famous Lutheran theologian. He rescued Jews during World War II, ends up dying in a concentration camp. And in his book, Life Together, what he said, and this is a hard truth, and this is one that's really hard to wrestle with. But I think he's accurate. He said, those who love community will kill it. Those who love God and other people will build it. Now, community there, he's using it probably in a different sense than most of us would hear it. He's looking at Nazi Germany. He's seeing the German people like there's one truth, there's one way, one Volk, one group, and one Führer, and it was all this like this way of looking inward. And he's saying, you know what, that doesn't really work. That what we need to do, instead of looking at everything from the outside in, what we need to do is we need to go to the middle, which is that love of God and love of other people. And that's what will start to build things out. And that is not easy to do. That is just not easy to do in a time of fermentation. Now, with that idea of, this time of fermentation, one idea that I want to share with you is this idea. Instead of faith as certainty or faith as a bunch of propositions that we all agree to. It's this idea of faith as attentiveness. Faith as attentiveness. And that's the idea that the faith we bring, we get really clear about the first things first. Like the last thing I would ever want anybody to hear at any new church live service is that those truths don't matter, that truth is unimportant. Truth is critical. It is critical. Critical that we have that kind of clarity in our lives. And it's not, and again, I want to belabor the point a bit, but it's not the full story. Faith should become sort of like this foundation or this bedrock. This faith is in like the truths that we want to base our lives on. It should become this bedrock, but it's a bedrock that gives us a firm foundation for seeing out. A firm foundation for seeing other people. Not as a way that closes us down, but a way that opens us up to the human experience. Where we see God speaking directly into our humanity. Into our humanity. And then we start to see, as God speaks into our humanity, we start to see God speaking into humanity all around us. That's a bit of faith as attentiveness. You know, that faith, instead of just staring down to come to one point, it's faith that gets me to raise my eyes and look out. Because how else am I going to serve? How else are we out there to make a difference? How else are we going to live the way that Jesus lived? Even though we do it at a much more imperfect level. Infinitely more imperfect in many ways. That idea of faith as attentiveness, I want to share with you, a line around that. This is Mary Oliver, a beautiful quote. Mary Oliver is a very well-known poet. 10 times a day, something happens to me like this. Some strengthening throb of amazement. Some good, sweet, empathetic ping and swell. This is the first, the wildest, and the wisest thing I know. Listen to this line, friends. That the soul exists and is built entirely of attentiveness. Oh. The soul exists and is built entirely of attentiveness. And I think, friends, that we can actually, for a minute, just play with me here. I think we can reverse engineer that. In other words, where do you find yourself in relationship in this beautiful way where you're super attentive? You're really aware. You're really awake. Where your ego, your agenda, your desire and need to constantly give advice kind of is asleep. And there's just this attentiveness. The person right in front of you. Where do you experience that? Where have you seen that this week? Where might you even hope for it? And I love this idea that again, coming back to our line, I want to make sure I read this correctly. Soul exists and it is built entirely out of attentiveness. So if it's built out of attentiveness, reverse engineering should say, I look for that part with attentiveness, the part that can be truly attentive to others. And that's how I discover my soul. That's where I can come back and feel how my soul is alive. The glory of God is the person fully alive. The glory of God is the soul fully alive. Another way to say that, the glory of God is the part of our soul fully attentive to the world. The Bible is just filled with these stories of Jesus walking along and noticing the short little guy in the tree, or Jesus walking along and noticing the person who just touches the edge of his garment. Why did he notice that? Well, again, Jesus functioning at a much higher, Lord God, Savior Jesus Christ, much higher level. But I think it's because his soul was fully attentive. In ways, maybe, however imperfectly, we can just mirror a little bit. What a way to go through a time of challenge. A time of a lot of fermentation. A time when there is so much change going on. I was thinking of the way this works. Last week, with church, as many of you know, I had to race out of here, get down to a wedding down in Maryland. Today, I have to race out of here, get up to a baptism up in Yardley. And so we can look at this wedding, right? And there's part of the wedding, right? There's part of the wedding that is the marriage license, that is sort of just the surface level of it all. And then we can see paintings. Then we can see paintings of it, and again, we can see a painting like this beautiful Norman Rockwell painting. See this beautiful painting, and it can be like, oh yeah, that's kind of a little bit deeper. I mean, I would rather have that hanging on my wall than a marriage license, and I would get more looking at that than I would do staring at a marriage license. It's kind of pulling us in a little bit more. Faith is attentiveness. That attentiveness to the things that's going on. But friends, nothing replaces this. That these are actual real people. And that attentiveness to who they are, and the love that they share, and the connection that they have. It's beautiful. That's where faith gets us. We live in a world that, boy, does this at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and does this incredibly well, actually. Sort of that very surface level skimming part. But if we don't ever dive into it, if we don't really practice faith as attentiveness, there's no new wine coming. There's no new wineskins forming. Instead of finding new forms, we just kind of go flat. We lose the music, we lose the color of so many of the things that God is asking us to do. So the thing to think about, friends, and I love this line in terms of the way that we can think about the content in a new way. Faith is connection with goodwill. Faith in connection with goodwill is the force that reforms and regenerates us, renews us, brings us to life, sanctifies us, justifies us, and depending on our level of growth and forward movement, purifies us from evil. That idea, friends, of faith and goodwill, faith and goodwill, faith and goodwill. And when we think of faith and goodwill, like maybe that's what we can do. Maybe faith and goodwill, maybe that's the wineskin maybe we can start to create. Keep coming back to that faith as attentiveness and the goodwill that goes along with it. I think you can see how those go together, right? If I have this idea that my faith, coming back to my soul, is based on attentiveness, openness to others might be the best way to say that. If it really is, and what God wants us to do is to infill that with this goodwill, like create things out of goodwill. That seems like a beautiful world to live into. Because you think about life, it's kind of a miracle how God can grow these. Not quite sure how that happens. But not only can he grow these, but God can set up a process where this can go into this and taste really good. But I can only witness that. In a humble way, I can't create that. That fermentation process, that's sort of God's thing. Like God's got to handle that. And oftentimes we don't know what to do. But maybe what we can do is trust that this is happening, that somehow this stuff is fermenting and turning into something that can go into here. And our job with creating that wineskin, as it were. Now, a glass bottle's not pliable, but a wineskin would be. A glass bottle or a wineskin that could hold that is to really keep on focusing on faith and goodwill. On being attentive and wishing well to every single person you meet. I think that can be one way to hold it. Now, as Ray comes out for our song here, think about the way you might be able to live that. Like, what does that look like? There's that part of us that grasps for the certainty, that grasps for the truth and wants to live fully in that. And oftentimes that is the best way to live, except for when it becomes the exclusion to others. Is there a path for you where we can hold on and be dedicated to these things that are so critically important? And remember that it is a time of fermentation. And remember as well that our job in times that can feel so unsure, faith and goodwill, attentiveness and wishing well. When we come back after this song, we're going to pull that together and really try to come to, let's remember this.
May the grace of God bless man, every woman in this land. Stay strong, keep your faith alive. Whatever comes to meet us, no darkness won't defeat us. Stay strong, keep your faith alive. Some say the end has come, said our souls are run. But I say, stay strong and keep your faith alive. Let's all come together, take care of each other. Stay strong, keep your faith alive. Raise your hand in the air. Stay strong, keep your faith alive. Take a stand, say a prayer. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. Hand in hand, side by side, with hearts open wide. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. Brothers, find a way with heaven here today. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. So raise your hand in the air. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. Take a stand and say a prayer. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. Well, it's times like these we need to remember what is real. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. United in our quest, just bring love and happiness. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. So raise your hand up in the air. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. So take a stand and say a prayer. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. One more time. Raise your hands up in the air. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. Take a stand and say a prayer. Stay strong and keep your faith alive. I got excited, I broke a string on that one.
It's a great old school song. So what I want to talk about, friends, is as we close this, and you know, it is tough. It's tough. Like how do we keep that connectedness together? You know, if this is a complete aside, but the last thing I think a church would ever want to be is just a video production company. Like that's not really it. And we'll lose that race because, you know, there's always be somebody who can do it better. And I think with church, synagogues, mosques, with all these beautiful things and the beautiful historical things that they've done for our culture. And again, there's been dark sides to it too. We don't want to pretend that there's not. But when we look at that and we honor that, it should stir in our heart a way to think, well, how do we take the best of that and deliver it towards the future? Taking the best of, delivering it towards the future. There are not easy answers for that question. I think, again, it does demand, a level of faith and goodwill, important levels of faith and goodwill, because there just has to be this attentiveness to what is right in front of us. And it's true attentiveness. Like, people who are really attentive, I don't even have the right phrase here. Like, there's sort of a glib way to hold attentiveness. Like, attentiveness means you're just kind of open, but attentiveness means you're really leaning into other people. Really leaning in. Really trying to be open. Remember Father Gregory Boyle's words, and it's ones that just need repeated again and again and again. And he talked about a woman coming in who was struggling with addiction, and he's got to go to a baptism, and she's making a big racket in his office, and he's just in the back of his head. He's just like, I just want her out of here. And he caught himself. And he offered this line in one of his books that was transformative for me in many ways. He said, I'd almost forgotten. People are never interruptions. I'd almost forgotten. People are never interruptions. Because that's where faith lives. We can learn about faith through a book or books. But that's not where it will come alive. And that aliveness, friends, that's so much of the legacy that we have to figure out a way to pass on to our children. That aliveness and that value. So they're not just seeing a marriage license, like this legal document, which is the way a lot of people see church. But they're seeing the wedding. They're seeing the marriage. They're seeing the thing that is indeed deeper. A new heart. This passage from the Old Testament, I will give a new heart and a new spirit. I'll put my spirit within you and I'll make you walk the path of salvation. Jesus comes along and I think Jesus would add to that, and I will walk with you on the path of salvation. That idea of the new heart. And I think, friends, when you think about the question, what can't we lose track of? Well, this is what we can't lose track of. We can't lose track as we go through challenging times, and I think for a lot of institutions, times are going to get more and more challenging, that the irreplaceability of the human connection, of the aliveness that can happen, of what faith communities can do in terms of creating these gatherings, these connectedness in ways that are just a miracle, friends. In ways that are just so special and that matter so much out there into the world. And it's hard. And again, stumbling over words a little bit here because it's here we are sort of at a point, and I don't know how all things look. I don't know where all things are going. I'm very unsure. But I do know we can't ever lose track of that. And there's lots of things with the internet world that we have. Yeah. There's lots of things with the internet world we have that work much better than church. You know, church is kind of awkward, and it's slow. And there's a bunch of people who are sort of trying and who are going to say the right thing one minute and the wrong thing the next minute. It doesn't work as well as other things might. You know, and I was thinking of it this way. I love listening to podcasts, and I was listening to one, and then, of course, it mentions that it's AI generated. And it was really good. Like, how do you compete with that? Far more articulate than anything that's been said from this stage, that's for sure. But there's no soul. There's no attentiveness. All there are algorithms. And how can we sort of keep coming back to that first things first in these times that are challenging? I mean, I think that's going to be the challenge in the year ahead. Like, how do we do that? I don't know. But I know, and I say this a lot, working with people, there's two ways to ask the question, you know, what do we do? Or what do we do? What's open to us? And maybe that's part of the year ahead is figuring out, like, obviously there's a fermentation process going on. And I don't think any of us really understand it, but I absolutely have faith that God does. And as that is happening, how can we do our bit? How can we keep coming back to our things? And it's not that, again, it's going to come back to things that look the way they used to look. But even in not looking the way it used to look, I think there's great promise in having it mean what it used to mean. Having that new heart, having that growth, having those pieces of connection that can make such a difference out there into the world. I mean, little things, friends. We talk about going out to community service projects. Small group. We have a small group coming up in August for one that's reading the book Finding Chica. A wonderful book, wonderful way to connect, wonderful way to get to meet some other people. I'm sure we'll have some more open houses. Like, whatever it takes, like let's think about those things. Let's think about those things as wineskins that can hold these changes and these challenges as we move forward into the world that is dawning. Yeah, and I don't want to end on a downer, because it's not. Like, I really do believe God's got it. God's got it even when we don't. And our job is to just do our bit. And as that beautiful passage said, practice faith as attentiveness and focus on goodwill. And then we will have done the work that was ours to do. So, here's to a brand new fiscal year. Here's to a new year looking ahead. Thank you for all your support getting us here. And with deep gratitude, looking forward to what the future brings. Amen. What we're going to do now, friends, is we're going to come in for our landing here at New Church Live. The landing part is we do a little prayer, little meditation, little blessing, and then we will close with a final song. So please join me. Lord, thank you for your presence here today. Thank you for all that you bring to us. We appreciate, Lord, with gratitude, all the many gifts that you've given us this year. And Lord, help us to take those gifts and to move them forward, to take that gift of aliveness and attentiveness and goodwill and really find ways to offer that as a sacred offering out there into the world. Thank you for your presence with us, Lord. Hear our prayer. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. See you folks next week.
One more song left in me for it with you. This is actually a new song I just wrote recently. This one's called The River of Love.
We walk in formation, tend to fall in line. Mythical information has taken over our minds. I sit by the river, meditate on truth, expand my sight. Oh, when I look to the other side, making good connections on the other side. For my peace of mind, I'm on the other side. On that river of love, hold back your judgments, put them in a swear jar. You may not have the best view standing where you are. I sit by the river and meditate on love, expand my sight. Oh, when I look to the other side, for new perceptions on the other side. For my peace of mind, I'm on the other side. On that river of love, washed away and I'm carried away, forever changed. On that river of love, I see how far we've come and how far we've got to go. It's gonna take all of us to carry on this show. I'll sit by the river and meditate on peace, expand my mind. Oh, when I look, there's no other side. Just a new perspective, there's no other side. That we're on, there's just a bigger life, including us all. On that river of love, on that river of love. Thank you, folks. Have a good week.